Okay, this is the oath of office. It's up there. This is the oath of office. Every person must swear in government, in all three branches of government, they must swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. It's not the same. That's not the same in every state, but it's pretty close. And yes, the Constitution is first. 99% of the time in every oath, it's first. Okay? Then the Constitution of the state where you work comes next. So the state Constitution and the federal Constitution we have sworn to. And
you know what you think about when you're lying here? You know you're going to die. And you think, that's all right. You lived a long time. You had a family that loved you. You had a job that you thought made a difference, that you thought was honorable. And then you see this. I'm afraid if I dig any deeper, no one's gonna like what I find. You took an oath. If you recall, when you first came to work for me, and I don't mean to the National Security Advisor of the United States. I mean to his boss. And I don't mean the president. He gave you word to his boss. You gave your word to the people of the United States. Your word is who we are.
in case you were wondering, this is a little clip from Clear and Present Danger. Isn't it amazing we need Hollywood to define the oath of office for us? Gosh. I guess they're not totally lost there, but I found that very enlightening. You took an oath, not to the president, but to his boss, to the people, because we are the only ones that bestow power on government. We are the only ones that can authorize them, their power and what they do. We give it, not because we vote, but because we stand firm on those principles that made America great, and that's what we do. There we go. So we bestow all power. We the people, first three words of the Constitution, we tell them what to do. Can we authorize something to our government officials that we don't possess? It's impossible. You don't have it. So can we authorize to our government, she has a bunch of cars and she doesn't have any. So we go to her house, all of us in the community say, hey, that's not fair. She has all these cars, she has none. Let's go to her house and ask her for the keys for one of the cars and then give it to her. Do we have the authority to do that? It's a good idea. We're being kind to her. We're all being Christian. We're all being Christian to her. No, it doesn't work that way. We don't have the authority to take any of her property and give it to her. That's the entire welfare system of our country now. We're forced to be charitable. And if we don't, we lose our home, and we lose our bank accounts, and they put us in jail. Quite the system, isn't it? And it's quite wrong, immoral, and unconstitutional. Doesn't fly, because we cannot authorize government to do that. So they are doing something that is called a usurpation. They have stolen power. And that's where we now need to come back in to our proper position as the head of this country. We must stand firm in our public officials following the Constitution. Well, this is the Article 6, and this is where we see that every public official is required to swear that oath. Senators and representatives before mentioned, okay, that's the federal legislature, and the members of the several state legislatures, that's all the state legislatures. So we have the legislative branch of all states and federal. We have all executive and judicial officers, good. now we have all three branches of government in the United States and in the several states shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. Why did the Founding Fathers do that? Because they wanted to perpetuate liberty. Folks, I said this over and over and over to the sheriffs this morning and the peace officers that were there. We in all three branches of government have one assignment: to secure liberty. That's it. Not write tickets all day, not set up roadblocks, not get all the drunk drivers off the roads, not fill our prisons with all the druggies. There might be some of that. Investigate crimes. Yes, 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 yes. The paradigm shift that we've got to make in our police academies is just this: that securing liberty and protecting the rights of the individual is exactly what we are about. Something went off? Yeah. Okay, good. Liberty is first in all three branches. That's what we do. That is America, and that is our job as sheriff and as a sworn guard of the Republic. And that's what we all are. Do we ever train in that? Well, we did this morning, and we will do it again tomorrow afternoon. And this is what I do all across the country. And we're starting a big tour. I don't know if any of you have heard of Robert David Steele and his big tour that is now starting on the 15th. And a lot of their buses, my bus, the CSPA bus, will be in Lander County, while the other buses are driving to Alabama, Atlanta, and whatever. And then I've got to fly home and then fly to meet them where they are. And folks, we need you behind us on this. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. So 3.5 months until August, I'm going to be doing that and still going back to my other training seminars, zigzagging the country on planes and buses. And we could really use your financial backup. Yes?
Iowa is July 9th, and then in Des Moines and Davenport is July 10th.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. We'll be back. And we're going to be living the field of dreams. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, state nullification. Anybody know what that is? Did I make that up? No, I did not. But Thomas Jefferson and James Madison did. They're the ones talking about state nullification, and that the states should nullify what the federal government is doing. And say, why? We just say no. We nullify it. And look at this part in gold. States have the authority to judge the constitutionality of the federal government's laws and decrees. I thought that was the U.S. Supreme Court. We already determined they don't have time to do all that. And why is it totally proper for the states to do this? Because we formed them. We formed the federal government. And anybody who thinks that we formed the new federal government to be our boss and to tell us what to do and run our lives after we just got rid of King George III and the English Parliament, that's nuts. We delegated, and who, man, Patrick Henry especially, they were really afraid of another strong central government. And they did everything in their power to create a Constitution and Bill of Rights to keep this new central government impotent, small, limited, and out of our lives. Do you know how many rights were actually delegated, not rights, authorities and powers were delegated to the new central government, the federal government? Not even 40. Go through the entire Constitution. It's not even 40. It was more important what they couldn't do than what they should be doing. But they have very limited powers. And if they ever want to go outside that, what must they do? Read the 10th Amendment. And what must the states do? Enforce the 10th Amendment. Okay? States' rights is very key in all of this. He, or they, Madison and Jefferson, argued that the state should refuse to enforce laws which they deemed unconstitutional. Boy, are you starting to see the picture here? It's an ongoing battle of that. This gets a lot more powerful than this. This is the easy stuff. This is the innocuous stuff. Let's wait till we get some of this amazing stuff. Now, the word in this whole paragraph here is interpose. You can see it in gold. But look at the part right above it. That state's legislature is duty-bound to interpose its power to prevent the federal government from victimizing its people. Do we really understand the doctrine of interposition? Do we know what interpose means? Okay, let me explain this. A parent interposes for the child that's getting too close to danger. Whether it's a cliff or a hole or drugs or any of these horrible things going on in our world today, the good parent interposes, puts herself in the way of the danger. The child is here, the danger is here, the parent goes here. Now, I learned this in basketball. My coach didn't say interpose, but he said, you got to stay between your man and the basket. If he moves, you move. And that's what interpose is. So the IRS comes in to abuse citizens and victimize its people. Then the sheriff puts himself in the way. And he doesn't allow it. And it's not violent. He's not hurting anybody. He's not even going to arrest the guy. He's just going to be in the way. We highly recommend that sometimes he consider arresting some of these criminals from Washington, D.C., though. And that's just fine with us if he does. Man, get them off the streets, for heaven's sakes. Okay, these are the two sheriffs that went to the Supreme Court, Prince and yours truly. And why did we do it? Well, this is one of the quotes from the decision. We have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Don't you wish your state legislature knew that? Your governor and everybody in the state legislature would know that? Well, you need to get a copy of that decision. I mean, how would you like to have that whole Supreme Court decision of all the highlights? It's already here. It's here. Just hand it to people. This is an amazing, and we haven't even got to the big stuff yet. This is still the innocuous stuff. Folks, this is the most amazing, powerful 10th Amendment decision in the history of our country, and who knows about it? Well, all of us in here do now. Okay. Now look what the judge said. This is Judge John Roll at the district court. He summarizes why I sued the federal government. Mack is thus forced to choose between keeping his oath or obeying the act. Watch, he doesn't call it a law, does he? Subjecting himself to possible sanctions. Remember the sanctions? Remember? They threatened to arrest us. A $10,000 fine and 1 year in prison if I say no to the federal government. Folks, you remember I told you this was the Clinton administration. I sued the Clintons and lived to tell about it. Okay. Another miracle. Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. This is also in the decision. When a Clio, it talks about a Clio. Who are the Clios? What is a Clio? Chief Law Enforcement Officer. In the Brady Bill itself, it tells who the Clios are. The sheriffs. They talk about us, calling us the Clios. And it says that the Clios of each county were the ones that had to do this for the federal government. In every case, it was the county sheriff. Don't you love it when the federal government gets something right? This is the threat of arrest. Just so you know, I didn't make this up. Under a separate provision of the GCA, what's that? Gun Control Act of 1968. They just call it GCA. Any person who knowingly violates the section of the GCA amended by the Brady Act, not Brady Law, shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for no more than 1 year, or both. There it is. And I certainly was going to knowingly not comply. And so I will tell you, though, at first we did the background checks because I didn't want to leave the gun shops hanging, because they would call us and say, okay, can this guy have a gun? So first of all, background checks, those of you who think that's a good idea, you've been brainwashed. Okay? Plain and simply. Why? Because no government on the face of the planet has the authority to tell any of you, unless you submit to our criminal history background check, you don't get your gun. Who has the authority to tell you that? If you don't subject yourself to our screening, you can never have your Second Amendment. Anybody agree with that? I don't. And have they done any good anyway? First of all, it's unconstitutional and it's unlawful for them to take power they do not constitutionally have. And I'm never going to support that. Even if it's a good idea. Well, it was a good idea to give her your car, wasn't it? But it was still illegal.
Right.
It's a good idea to have background checks. No, well, maybe it is, maybe it's not, but it's illegal. They don't have that authority. And we're all going to, oh, we're so scared. Yes, please save us from all these gun people who shouldn't have a gun. How's that worked out for us? Then don't give them authority they're not supposed to have. And don't tell, oh, good, yeah, we're going to have all these background checks. Why? Because government's saving us. Oh, my gosh. And they still get them, of course, faster than you do. Okay, and Ronald Reagan talked about the federal tax system. Man, you can't assail the federal tax system more than he does here. Federal tax system is utterly impossible, utterly unjust, completely counterproductive. It reeks with injustice and is fundamentally un-American, and it has earned a place for a rebellion. That's Ronald Reagan. And he didn't change any of that, to be honest with you. I'm glad he said this, but he didn't really do anything to stop it.
You tried to assassinate him.
Yeah, third month that he was in office. I was very much aware of that. That's part of my case here. But this is amazing. And so I ask every sheriff in this country, why would you allow IRS agents in your county so they can continue to do this kind of injustice to the American people in your county? And this is, let's be honest here. Show me any Republican or any Democrat in Washington, D.C. that has done anything about this to stop this injustice. And so who is supposed to, I'm telling you right now, Sheriff Hodgson from Massachusetts was absolutely correct. The sheriffs can stop it. And this, I don't even think this would be that difficult. You let the IRS know that the Bill of Rights will be enforced strictly in your county and that you will be checking on everything they do. Wow. That will pretty much stop the IRS because there's nothing they do that's constitutional. Nothing. Okay? How long are we going to allow that criminal organization to continue to victimize Americans and we don't do anything about it? Come on. This isn't that difficult, but it takes some courage and it takes some recognition. Oh, I love Thomas Paine. Oh, man. We did Thomas Paine a lot this morning. The guy who started, that Gary started off with, talked about Thomas Paine. These are times that try men's souls. What, boy, the last 16 months, have these been times that try men's souls? I mean, we're always outside, not wearing a mask, wondering if we're going to go to jail. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Britain with an army to enforce her tyranny. Let's define tyranny. We don't even talk about tyranny anymore in our country. Can anybody really define tyranny? Okay, in my junior high government, I just said it's bad government. Let's make it a little bit more powerful because it's a little bit more than just bad government, isn't it? It's cruel. It's inhumane. It's oppressive. It's abusive. It's evil. That is what tyranny is. Man.
Sounds like Biden.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like Harry Reid, too. Yeah. Britain, with an army to enforce her tyranny, has declared that she has a right not only to tax, but to bind us in all cases whatsoever. That was the British Declaratory Act. They literally did this. They repealed and abolished the Stamp Act because the American colonists were so upset about it. Okay, you stupid colonists, we're going to let you have your taxes back. And then they passed the Declaratory Act. What did Paine call it? Slavery. And we've come full circle, folks. That's what Congress thinks that they can do today. Is there anything Congress thinks that they can't pass against us? Any law that is out of bounds, even when it's guaranteed in the Bill of Rights, the list of untouchables, they can tell us how to have Thanksgiving. They can tell us where we can go, what we can do, what we can eat, where we can shop, what we have to wear. And if we can go to church, and they think they can do all that, and just tell the CDC to tell us to do it. And they've never even passed legislation about any of it. None of them. And then law enforcement thinks it has some sort of responsibility to enforce it, when it's not even a law. Where have we come? We've come full circle back to the Declaratory Act. And that's one of the reasons we fought the Revolutionary War. And now we just sit and take it. Boy, I love Thomas Paine. And then Jennifer Long, an IRS agent, testified before Congress in 1998 that they use illegal and unnecessary and sometimes illegal activities, and they fabricated evidence against American citizens who they knew could not afford to hire a lawyer to defend themselves. And so they knew what? They were going to get their high commission of just collecting from people who were innocent, and they didn't care who they were and if they were innocent or not. And this is the IRS that has been used by presidents for the last 70 years to go after their public and political enemies. And it's still used that way. And they'll do it again and again. And now the FBI's used that way. Nixon used CIA and FBI against each other to try to get all his enemies out of the way. It is absolutely the most corrupt system ever. Because they're not following the Constitution. The Constitution's great, but you have to follow it. You have to obey it. You have to keep your oath of office. And instead, here's one lady from the IRS telling the truth. One other guy did it too, but he wouldn't do it in public. So they put him behind what they call in camera, where he was silhouetted and his voice was muffled, and he testified to the same thing. And the only time that's ever done before in the history is a member of the former mafia organization called the Cosa Nostra. Do you see any correlation, the IRS and Cosa Nostra? Okay, yeah, I do. Okay, here we go again. Front page of USA Today, March of 2015. U.S. drug agents engaged in sex parties. Cartels supplied the prostitutes. Folks, the DEA is supposed to be there stopping the drug trade. And instead, they're taking bribes from the cartels. They're having a big sex party down in Colombia while on duty, hired to stop the drug trade. This was dozens and dozens, and it says right here, for years this was going on. So you have to know it's dozens and dozens of agents. Do you know what happened to these guys? Nothing. They had another dog and pony show, and I remember when they were doing it, Trey Gowdy was pointing his finger at the new director of the DEA. The only thing that happened, nobody was charged, nobody was arrested, nobody was prosecuted, nobody was even reprimanded. No one was even disciplined or fired, except the new lady, the first time they ever had a lady director of the DEA, she resigned. That's the only thing that happened. Like it was her fault. Okay? Maybe she should have been watching the house a little bit better, but okay. Nobody prosecuted. Now let's watch what Thomas Paine says about this. Okay? This is Thomas Paine. He's describing that, and he's describing the corruption of our government today, even though this is 1775. What signifies it to me? What difference does it make to me, he's saying? Whether he who destroys my property and kills or threatens to kill me is a king or a common man, my countryman or not my countryman, whether it be done by an individual villain or an army of them. If we reason to the root of things, we shall find no difference. Neither can any just cause be assigned why we should punish in the one case and pardon in the other. This is exactly what's going on today, and this has been done for decades, maybe even longer. And so I ask every sheriff in this country, why would you allow IRS criminality, DEA criminals, and any other federal agent to come into your county without some sort of check and balance on what he's doing. I can't see that we could ever allow that again. The trust should not be there at all. Oh, we go golfing with those guys. Oh, we have coffee every Friday morning. That's great. And you tell them to check with you before they ever do anything in your county ever again. You have a good relationship with them, they shouldn't mind at all, should they? Who does that hurt? Maybe their pride, okay? And I don't care about their pride. I could care less. Now, there's been sheriffs that have done this sort of thing, okay? Now, I didn't just sue the federal government. Well, we had a bridge wash out in our county back in 1995. And the Army Corps of Engineers and the EPA wouldn't let us fix the bridge because they had to conduct their environmental impact study. And 9 months later, they still don't have it done. And the people who can't use that bridge are really getting ticked. And you know who they're getting ticked at? The county commissioners. Because they're just sitting there waiting for the EPA and Army Corps of Engineers to fix the bridge. And it's our bridge. And we're not trying to do a new bridge. We're just going to fix the bridge like it was before the flood. I know that's horrible for the federal government to understand. And so finally, the 3 board members on the county commission vote unanimously to fix the bridge. Then the Army Corps of Engineers and EPA threatened to arrest them. And they said, we're going to charge you $50,000 a day for every day you're in violation. $50,000. And they're going to arrest all the maintenance workers at the scene. Now, you guys know the sheriff is in charge of bridges, right? I wasn't. I wasn't involved until what? They threatened to arrest everybody in my county that's going to fix the bridge. So I called the Army Corps of Engineers and EPA into my office. And I said, I don't know if you guys have heard that I'm really kind of a crazy kind of guy because I'm already suing the Clinton administration. And we heard something about that. Well, let me tell you something. I'm really easy to get along with. I'm a nice guy, okay? And but there's just a couple of things you're not going to do in my county. Like you're not going to arrest anybody. And if you do, I'm going to arrest you. And I don't know where you think you're going to take them after you arrest them, but you're not bringing them to my jail. But you're not arresting them at all. Because if you do, I'm going to arrest you. And so we had that little talk, and they left town. We fixed the bridge. Nobody paid a dime in fines, and everybody was happy because they left. Okay? And the story didn't end there. So my son is a nurse, and about 4 years ago, he was working as a nurse in a cardiac unit in Phoenix. And he's got a patient that's a lady, and this man keeps coming in to visit her, and he surmises that that's his wife, and my son and this man start talking a little bit, and he said, well, where are you from? And he said, well, I'm from Thatcher, Arizona. Really? You're from Thatcher, Arizona? Huh. Well, I used to work for the EPA, and the sheriff ran me out of town when I lived there. and my son said, that was my dad. And now, I don't know if the guy tried to save face or what, but he told my son that he really admired me for it. He couldn't say anything then, but he said, that your dad was dang cool, man. So I don't know if he was kidding, but it could have been. So anyway, true story. But you know Sheriff Brad Rogers from Elkhart County, Indiana? We have some Amish in here, or I saw some Amish. Anyway, there was an Amish, yeah, there you go. There was an Amish farmer in Elkhart County, Indiana. I'm even going to say his name. His name's David Hostetler. I've met him before, real nice guy. The FDA just kept checking on this guy's farm. He was a dairy farmer. And you know, the Amish, they don't pasteurize their milk. You know, they have raw dairy products. I don't know if you've ever tried them, but I have, and I love them. They're all great. Lots of good vitamins and enzymes in these products. They don't burn their milk and destroy the natural goodness and the wholesome nature of the food. So, and I used to work with Vernon Hirschberger in Wisconsin. And I've gone around the country defending these dairy farmers. And at in Madison, Wisconsin, with the Hirschbergers and a few others, we drank raw milk on the front steps of the state capitol as a protest because we felt like we were drinking cocaine or something, you know. Wow, that's horrible. Wow. And we thought we were going to get arrested. Okay? Well, one of the state senators came out and did it with us. So we loved that part. And I've done that in about 7 different states now. I have drunk raw milk in 7 different states where it was absolutely illegal. Okay? And you know the funny thing of it is? I hate milk. I've never liked milk in my life. But I will tell you, I will admit that raw milk goes down the easiest as long as it's cold. I don't like warm. Okay. But as long as it's cold, and every time I did it, I said, now make sure it's cold. I'm not going to be able to drink this stuff without gagging. Okay? But David Hostetler reported the FDA to the sheriff, Brad Rogers. This is about 10 years ago. Brad Rogers has termed out. You only get 2 terms as sheriff in Indiana. So now he's a county commissioner. And he won that by 69%. And the people love this guy because he's been all constitutional and defending people. And so the FDA is still going after this Amish farmer. And they're trying to take him to a grand jury in Detroit. How's he going to get there? Okay, so anyway, he complained to Rogers. Rogers talked to me, and we're really good friends. And Rogers had this training about 15 years ago, even before we had the CSPOA organized. He was getting my training. I've been doing this, like Gary said, for about 25 years. But boy, we have a lot more ammunition on all this now. So he told the FDA to leave David Hostetler alone. And he said, if you don't, and if you come back here without duly signed warrants, probable cause, and due process, I will arrest you for trespassing in my county. Whoa. So the FDA now gets their attorney involved in the Attorney General's office, and Mr. Goldstein writes back a letter to, well, he didn't know it was me and Brad, but Sheriff Rogers, and I put the letter together. And he writes back and says, sorry, Sheriff Rogers, we are supreme, and he quotes the supremacy clause, and he left out the part where it says, he put ... where it says they're supposed to follow the Constitution in order to be supreme. Okay? He left that part out. So he's lying. So we pointed that out in our response. And sure enough, they threatened to arrest Brad Rogers with a felony obstruction of justice. So Brad calls me and said, hey, they're probably going to arrest me. And I says, hey, we got you covered. Tell your wife when it happens to give me a call. We got you covered. Okay? Instead, after we do our response, Mr. Hostetler gets a certified letter from the Department of Justice saying that the whole thing is dropped. Yeah. And they left town, and they haven't been back in over 10 years. Okay? Okay. But do you see where Thomas Paine's quote is all coming into play here? Does it really matter who it is that's victimizing us? Does it really matter who's destroying us or threatening to kill us or killing us? Government does it or street criminals do it? The end result? The street criminals give you a fighting chance. The IRS never will. It is incontestable. This is right out of the Supreme Court decision, Mack v. U.S. This is right, it's in this little booklet. It is incontestable that the Constitution established a system of dual sovereignty. It's just that the federal sovereignty is very small. It's right here. State sovereignty is huge. Although the states surrendered, and that's wrong, the states didn't surrender anything. This is a little bit of a mistake from Scalia, but he actually corrects it in just a minute. We didn't surrender anything to the new federal government. We delegated to them. Just like the 10th Amendment says, the key word, delegated. And not many of their powers, just a few, discrete and enumerated. We'll see that in just a minute. The new federal government retained the states, that's talking about the states, retained a residuary and inviolable sovereignty. If Iowa were totally, inviolably sovereign, don't you think we could run our own education without the federal government? How much else, too? Yeah. Okay, so Scalia repents now in this. Residual state sovereignty was also implicit, of course, in the Constitution's conferral upon Congress of not all governmental powers. Well, if they don't have all governmental powers, then what kind do they have? We'll read it, he says. But only discrete enumerated ones. That's powerful stuff there. Enumerated because you can actually list them. You can number them. Remember I told you it's not even 40. It's not even 40. And you know how many law enforcement authorities and powers that we delegated to the new federal government? There's 5. There's 5. Treason, counterfeiting, felonies committed on the high seas. You're going to like this one. Protecting our borders. And, I know, and laws against nations. So if we have a treaty with Canada and somebody goes into Canada and they violate that treaty somehow, that's also a federal offense. 5 law enforcement authorities. That's it. Do you know how many they've stolen? It's probably in the neighborhood of about 5,000 that they've taken upon themselves. Now, let's ask this legal question. So does the federal government have the authority, proper authority and power to confiscate drugs at the border? Yes, they do. Why? Because they're supposed to be protecting our borders. That's a federal delegation that we gave them. Of course. But inside the states, they have none. None. That's all the sheriffs and the state's enforcement. So let's look at the discrete enumerator. How do we keep the federal government's powers small and impotent and discrete and enumerated? Well, he answers that by the 10th Amendment's assertion. The question now here in all legality is, who's supposed to enforce the 10th Amendment? Of course, it's the states. It's the sheriffs. It's the governors. It's the county commissioners. It's the mayors. It's the chief of police. It's every patrol officer, and it's everybody in law enforcement in Iowa. Then he quotes the 10th Amendment, which is what we filed on. The powers not delegated. That's all powers not delegated, key word, to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Shows how powerful we are, doesn't it? Wow. He's not finished. The great innovation of this design was that our citizens would have 2 political capacities, 1 state and 1 federal. Get what he says now. Each protected from incursion by the other. And I remember one time where this has happened. In my lifetime, John F. Kennedy what did he do? He sent federal troops into Montgomery, Alabama. No, Mobile, Alabama. Wherever University of Alabama is. That Mobile? Anybody know? Is it Tuscaloosa? Okay. Well, it was the University of Alabama. So wherever that's located, I can't remember. But anyway, he sent troops in there because Governor Wallace wouldn't allow blacks in the University of Alabama. And he made sure that they did. And I'm the biggest states' rights guy in the world, and I'm totally in favor of what he did. Why? Because liberty is the key for all of us. And if a state is denying citizens their rights, then everyone has the responsibility to oppose it and to fix it. And Kennedy fixed it, and it didn't hurt anybody. And it guaranteed the rights of all of us because we are all created equal. In Plessy versus Ferguson, we kept the Supreme Court endorsed segregation. You know what they called it? Separate but equal. Have you ever heard of anything so stupid in your life? And this is the Supreme Court that we're supposed to, they're the ones that decide what we can do and what's constitutional, what's right and wrong. They've got it wrong lots of times, haven't they? Abortion. God, are you kidding? And so, Plessy versus Ferguson, we kept, you know what they did? They literally said this, you dark separates are here, and you light separates are here. That's really what they did. And for 55 years, our country went along with that. Why? The state should have nullified that like that. Folks, I'm going to say it again. Liberty and equality are first. And we don't make any exceptions to that. Not for race, not for religion. We're certainly not going to do it for the Amish. We're not going to make exceptions. I don't agree with everything the Amish do. I'm not Amish. I don't like the haircut. You guys, but I'll fight and defend them to my death. They're great people. Even if they're not great people, we fight and defend them to the death. We might not agree. It doesn't matter if you do. Because they might not agree with us, and then it happens to us too. And tyranny knows no boundaries, except for the ones we establish for it, and we need to keep doing that. As Madison expressed it, the local or municipal authorities form distinct and independent portions of the supremacy. Get this. No more subject within their respective spheres to the general authority than the general authority is subject to them within its own sphere. Does that sound like the federal government is our boss? No. We are theirs in almost every case, except where they have been delegated powers. Wow. Scalia really, and all of this that I just read is in there. This part is in here. Folks, take them home. Give them to people. Spread the word on this. I'm not just the one-man show on this. This separation of the two spheres is one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. Is one of the structural protections, just one of those little things, you know, those structural protections of liberty thing. Just as the separation and independence of the coordinate branches of the federal government serve to prevent the accumulation of excessive power in any one branch, a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse from either front. When you came to this meeting tonight, did you want to know how to reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse in America? There it is. A healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will do that. When we have local and state officials that have the courage to interpose on our behalf. And it's peaceful, and it's effective, and it's wonderful, and it's immediate. We don't have to wait for another politician to try to promise us something else. We do it together now. Do not leave the sheriff alone to do this without you. We must stand beside him and behind him. And we take back liberty tomorrow. Folks, this is real. It's an absolute solution. Now, Biden has told us that there's no right that is absolute. Then he doesn't understand the purpose of the Bill of Rights, does he? They are absolutes. They are the supreme law. You absolutely cannot touch my right to keep and bear arms. You can't infringe it at all. It means what it says. And they say, what is the excuse they say? Well, you can't, freedom of speech, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You know, people are going to trample each other and kill each other, blah, blah, blah. That's right. You can't do that. That's a crime. You can't misuse a gun either. You can't kill somebody with a gun or misuse a gun. That's a crime. But as long as you're not threatening anyone else, it is absolute. We have never supported anything that was criminal activity by using any of those things like that. Come on. It's ridiculous. And it's such a lie that they're perpetrating with all of that. Hence, now Scalia quotes the Federalist Papers. He's quoting the founders. He's quoting the Constitution, quoting the Bill of Rights. Now he's quoting the Federalist Papers. Hence, when we put all this together with the states and the sheriffs, what are we getting? What is the end result? A double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other at the same time that each will be controlled by itself. Folks, did you get this? Let's sit down and talk about this a minute. Look, the different governments are supposed to be controlling each other. It's in the Supreme Court decision. It's in the Federalist Papers. It's in the Constitution. It's in my oath of office. Oh my gosh. This is such powerful stuff here. I did not make up any of this, and it's not my opinion. This is the fundamental principles that our country was founded upon, that there would be checks and balances at every level of government, and that each government would be protecting me from other bad government. And that all of them are protecting me from tyranny. Wonderful. Do you see the solution here? Is it starting to hit? It is a solution. The power of the federal government would be augmented immeasurably if it were able to impress into its service and at no cost to itself the police officers of the 50 states. Well, that's what they tried to do with the Brady Bill. They tried to commandeer us for federal bidding. Man, was it a miracle that 7 of us said no. What a miracle. The power of one. Whoa. Gee. And when we compromise and when we play, this is what
The
happens.
king desires peace.
Longshanks desires peace.
He declares it to me, I swear it. He proposes that you withdraw your attack. In return, he grants you title, estates, and this chest of gold, which I am to pay to you personally.
A lordship and titles. Gold. That I should become Judas.
Peace is made in such ways.
Slaves are made in such ways.
Well, William Wallace just described the grant system that we're all subject to in this country. All these law enforcement, we got to get these federal grants. In fact, they'll even run for office and say, well, I've got the highest amount of federal grants for our county in the history of our county. You made slaves out of all of us because now we have to do what they say in order to get those grants. I've seen those federal grants. And anybody says that there's not strings attached does not speak English. The federal government we held may not compel the states to enact or administer a federal regulatory program. They are not our boss. This is my absolute favorite quote from this entire decision. I got it memorized. You ready? I want all of you to memorize it. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. What does that do to COVID-19 regulations? The Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. By the way, folks, this is in that little white booklet. This is the main thing in that little white booklet. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government precisely so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. The crisis of the day. Wow, we got another crisis of the day. Scalia is calling it completely correct here. There's always going to be another one. And the sheriff, with you standing with him and his deputies, will erect the barriers against these crises and protect us all from tyranny and restore the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. This isn't just hope. This is real. I've already seen sheriffs do that. Do you know how many sheriffs stood all across the country in the last 16 months? It's astonishing. It's the most ever. So there's been a little bit of a silver lining in all this crap because sheriffs recognized it. Sheriff Lamb in Arizona said, we're not going to shut any businesses down. Sure, we'll go do a walkthrough in these businesses and bars and restaurants, and we'll encourage people to be safe and to do what's best to protect themselves. But we're not forcing anybody to shut down. We're not their boss. And we certainly are not the masked police. Loved it when they said that. So I was testifying in court. I was testifying in the district court. Now, none of the sheriffs testified at the circuit court or any of the appellate courts. Well, there's just 2 appellate courts, right? Circuit court and the Supreme Court. We did not testify. At the Supreme Court, each side got 30 minutes. And I don't mean 30 minutes and 5 seconds. 30 minutes, bam, and they're cut off. I was really afraid that we were losing, but then when my attorney got up, boy, oh boy, I said, we're going to win this. I really thought we were going to do better than a 5-4 split, but we won. And it was an astonishing experience. But at the district court where I was testifying, I felt that the attorney for the federal government was doing a real good job of painting me into a corner. And right when the thing couldn't have been worse for me, she stops. She stops cross-examining me and starts testifying to the judge. And I've never seen anything like that before. That's totally against any courtroom protocol. And I was wondering why my attorney wasn't objecting. He let her talk. The judge let her talk. And then the judge let her have it. She testified, which she's not supposed to do. She can ask me questions, but that's it. She doesn't get to testify. It wasn't closing arguments or anything like that. She could have done it then, but no, she didn't. She's talking to me right here, and then now she's talking to the judge. Like I'm not even there anymore. How rude, you know? I filed a case, and then she ignores me, okay? And then she says, well, Your Honor, in the first 4 months of the implementation of the Brady Bill background checks, we have denied, get this, 250,000 felons across the country from getting access to guns in this country. You guys really think there's 250,000 felons that are going into gun shops saying, I am a fugitive from justice, please call the sheriff and arrest me? That's what those forms say. You fill them out before when you went to the gun shops. That's what they say. I actually investigated that too after she gave that statistic. It was all based on people who had not paid traffic fines or hunting license fines. There was no felons involved. And you know, out of those 250,000 felons, they arrested 4. 4! And they're supposed to be all felons. That means they were prohibited felons and they were under arrest as soon as they go into the gun shop. Oh my God. So, we know, the federal government has trouble with lying. This is what the judge told her. Counselor, do not pretend in this courtroom that your statistical analysis somehow equates to constitutionality. Don't you love that judge? Well, no good deed goes unpunished. He was assassinated. Do you remember the assassination in Tucson, Arizona of Gabby Giffords, the attempt? He was the second one killed. And this guy interposed for me throughout this entire case. Do you know that we won every pretrial motion? They tried to remove me for standing. Janet Reno filed this big old motion to get me out of the case at all. That I couldn't even do this. That I had no standing, that the county could sue, but the sheriff can't. And Judge Roll goes, of course the sheriff, you threatened to arrest him and you try to force him into working for you under threat of arrest, and he can't say no, and he can't take legal action against you. How's he supposed to get out from underneath this? You know what they said? Quit his job. So we won that. We won all of them. We were totally winning all this. And then my attorney comes to me and says, hey, do you want to have some more fun? I go, okay, yeah. So what now? He says, I think we could get an order of protection from the judge that the Clintonites and the Justice Department cannot touch you while we're in court. And I said, really? Yeah, let's try it. He filed the injunction. The other side gets a chance to squash it, right? So they have to respond. So Janet Reno responded. And she said, we didn't mean to arrest the sheriffs. We just meant the threat of arrest was aimed at the FFLs, the gun shop owners. And so the judge wrote her in a response and said, I am granting the injunction for Mack because you don't get to change the law that Congress made by fiat. In other words, her opinion doesn't get to change the law. It was clearly in the law. I showed you the threat of arrest. And so we actually got an injunction. That's all part of the record too, folks. And I got to tell you, I don't know about you guys, the sun's going down, and I'd like a little bit more light in here. Okay. I think I saw a couple of guys kind of nodding a little bit. I know. Can't have that. So, no, a little more. No, turn that back. Yeah, leave that on. Yeah, right there. Because I think we're going to still see this, and I don't think we have any more clips anyway. Wow. There's a lot of people here. No, I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. But this is amazing thing that I got that injunction. Do you know what that means? I had an order of protection from the Clinton administration being able to touch me or do anything, get near me. Okay? Can you put that into perspective with me? Okay, it's this. I looked at all the people that ever sued Bill Clinton throughout his entire political career when he was governor and everything else. I was the only one to ever sue him on a non-sexual matter. Huh? Okay.
That is what it is.
Yeah, oh yeah, what is. What is. Okay. Okay, so I do have one other clip, okay? But I think we can see, no, we can't. We got to show this clip, sorry. We're going to have to go blinking light. It looks very clear on here. Okay, that's good.
Let me have those front seats. Y'all better make it light on yourselves and let me have those seats. Are you gonna move? No. If you don't give me that seat, I'm gonna have you arrested. You may do that. Jesus.
So the bus driver gets off the bus. You can turn the lights back on. And he calls the cops. And 2 cops show up. And they arrest Rosa Parks. Because she had the audacity not to give her seat to a white man. She had the audacity to take off her mask and not go along with stupid rules, regulations, and statutes. There was no law that said you could arrest a black person for not giving their seat to a white man. There was no law. There was no statute. It was a cultural norm. And so what did they charge her with? Of course, disorderly conduct. Probably going to add trespass to that too. But it was disorderly conduct. I looked it up. And I've always, this really touches me every time I see this, and I've seen this 100 times or more. I mean, probably more, because I've done this probably hundreds and hundreds of times. Folks, how should that have played out? I'm going to tell you what should have happened that day. We should have never heard of Rosa Parks. We should have heard of the sheriff who stopped it, who taught the entire community. This is what happens when we have laws and statutes and rules and regulations and mandates that are so stupid and outside the Constitution. Somebody's got to stand and stop it. So again, I'm going to play it out what should have happened that day. And this is what should have happened. The dispatch gets the call right when the sheriff happens to be in there. And he tells dispatch, I'm going to take Deputy Jones with me and we're going to handle that call. So he takes Deputy Jones, they get on the bus, they walk up to Rosa Parks, and they said, ma'am, just what seems to be the problem here? And she looked up at him and she says, why can't we just be left alone? Anybody else ever feel like that? Do you know you have a right to be left alone and that government has to guarantee that? I don't want to be on the grid. I don't have to be. Leave me alone. I want to train and raise my kids at home and teach them at home. It's called homeschooling. That's up to me. It's not up to government to make my health choices for me. That's why we live in America, because we get to do that on our own. Oh my gosh. Government, making our health choices for us? They can't even balance their own budget. So, it touches the sheriff when Rosa Parks responds to him like that. And he sits down next to her. And he reaches over and he shakes her hand. And he said, Mrs. Parks, what you did here tonight took a lot of courage. And it would be an honor for my deputy and me to escort you home safely. And they do. And they take her home. And then they tell her husband and her that they're going to be giving them extra patrol the next few nights and days to make sure that there's nobody burning crosses in their home, or worse, trying to lynch them for thinking that they go outside the box we were trying to put them all in. Folks, we're all getting to the back of the bus. They've just changed who they do it to. They're still doing it. You don't think this mask is going to the back of the bus? Of course it is. It's worse. They're making our health choices for us. They're mandating what we wear on our face. They're arresting ministers. They're stopping church service in America. All so we can take care of you. It's for your own good. Yeah, it's for your own good. Okay, trust us. We're government. We know. Yeah. Holy moly. All these corrupt officials, and they're going to tell us how to run our lives? Oh my gosh. And then this good sheriff doesn't finish there. He makes sure that Mr. Parks has a gun in the home. And he asks him, do you have a gun in the home? He says, yes, Sheriff, I do. He says, is it loaded? He says, Sheriff, it doesn't do you any good if it's not. Folks, that's what a constitutional sheriff should have done then. And it's what every one of them should be doing today. And if we do have that sheriff that understands that and is sensitive enough to that, we take back freedom tomorrow. This is a great story. And I'm going to kind of dovetail from that right to the end. As a matter of fact, I don't need this anymore. We're gonna give this a rest. Yeah. It's been a long day. And you've really touched my heart. And we're going to finish with General Washington. And when Gary had, what was that guy's name? Yeah, from Federalist. He showed the picture of Washington crossing the Delaware. So I want you to picture that in your mind. Didn't Washington look so brave? Do you know that he thought about turning around 4 times? Maybe more? He told his brother that. He was not sure it was the right decision. Even though you've seen the painting where he is praying next to his white stallion. That's probably because he knew this was the end of the war. If they cross the Delaware and go back into Trenton, they're going to be fighting. Who are they fighting? The Hessians. Do you know who the Hessians were? Paid mercenaries from Germany. They're hitmen. They're professional murderers. They're professional soldiers. And what did we have? A sick, tired, exhausted, starving, dying of dysentery, deserting Continental Army. And so they go into Valley Forge running from the redcoats, and they thought maybe they could get rested enough and get some food, which still didn't have. The only thing they were eating were fire cakes. And fire cakes is just flour and water. And there wasn't anything cakey about it. It was more like a porridge. No wonder they were dying of dysentery. And they had very few provisions. One of the captains said in his journal that some of the men were naked in every sense of the word. This is at Christmas time. And some of the women followed him around trying to sew clothes for him as much as they could. How fast is that? by hand. And how do you make boots in time to help these soldiers? And you know what Washington did for his army? The Federalist said it earlier. He called in The American Crisis by Thomas Paine, and he had all the men read it. These are times that try men's souls. And then he saw the part about the Declaratory Act and about the Redcoats, the army for Britain enforcing laws of tyranny and enforcing tyranny. And the man started to get hope, and the man started to be motivated. And Washington was inspired by God. And he takes the men back across, away from the safety and warmth of Valley Forge, takes what little bit they can put on the ferries and barges to get over to the other side of the Delaware. They get into New Jersey at about midnight. Now it's the 26th, the morning of the 26th. Horrible, horrible blizzard. Some of the men die on the way of hypothermia. One captain wrote about the blood prints in the snow and ice, where the men's feet were cracking and bleeding. True story. And they get into Trenton, surprise the Hessians, defeat the Hessians, kill about 50, take about 900 captive. And now they have all the food that they can imagine. The venison, the turkey, the fruits and vegetables of a great Thanksgiving, and maybe some rum to warm them up a little bit. But folks, it was the best Christmas this army had ever had, because we had a general who prayed for guidance and inspiration from God Almighty. And you know what happened after this? They had this huge victory, and the French decide to get in the war because it looks like Washington can defeat the English. If we don't have Washington, the war's over. If we don't have the French, the war's over. If we don't win Trenton and beat the Hessians, the war's over. Who knows what we would be right now, right? Maybe we're still owned by the English, who knows, and we still have the Declaratory Act. But we've come full circle on that anyway, because we have the corruption of Washington, D.C. Folks, when Washington did this, he asked us all a question. The history lesson of the Battle of Trenton is simply this: what time is it? My dear friends, what time is it? Washington is asking. Washington showed us, what time is it? When your backs are to the wall, when you're exhausted, when you're defeated, when you're discouraged, when you're sick, when you have no provisions, when you have no hope. What time is it? It's time to fight. It's time to do something. It's time to stand, especially if we can go hand in hand with our neighbors and the rest of us, and we the people standing with our sheriffs in the holy cause of liberty. It's time to stand. It's time to do something. It's time to fight. It's time to stand. We have a lot of people in the back standing. Okay, I'm going to finish with one other comment about this whole General Washington thing. Folks, I hope that you felt part of the Battle of Trenton. What an absolute miracle. We had no business winning that battle or any of them. We're going against the greatest empire in the world, the greatest military power in the world. And what did we have? Prayer in Washington. And luckily, the French. But nobody would have expected us to win even a battle, let alone the war after the Battle of Yorktown, where Washington outmaneuvered Cornwallis. And another amazing, amazing inspired battle by Washington. Man, Washington was smart. And we can all be smart like Washington. Pray for guidance and stand firm in this holy cause. I'll leave with a quote from the Declaration of Independence, the last line. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. I'm going to ask you to exercise that tonight. We really need your financial support. I can't do this alone, and as long as I'm funded, I'm going to keep doing it. We'd love all of you to join. Go to cspoa.org, cspoa.org, and become a member. Donate what you can. Get the books tonight. Redeem our country. Take our country back. Do something more tonight, today, tomorrow. Stand with your sheriff. Talk to your sheriff. Get an absolute relationship with your sheriff. I don't care who it is. If he doesn't want to stand for liberty, then you tell him you're going to do everything in your power to get him replaced. If he will, and he's willing to learn, that's all we're after. There was several of them in there today. I know they can do it. One man started making this happen here. His name was Gary Schauber. One sheriff started this happening. It was Sheriff Mack from a small town in Safford, Arizona. One man took on the entire federal government. What a David and Goliath story that was. Thank God 6 other sheriffs joined me. They saved me in a lot of ways. A lot of people have been saving me since all this has happened. The decision came out June 27, 1997, and I've been bouncing all over the country. I've written 8 books since then, and it's just been one miracle after another. And folks, the miracles will keep going on, but not if we sit. We've got to fight, we've got to stand, we've got to do something more. Make the miracle happen. Answer the call, as David of old did. He answered the call with the humility of a shepherd boy and the courage of a warrior. We must do likewise. Pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor to this holy cause. May I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this and for bolstering me in this great work that I've been called to do. God bless each one of you. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Mack. I had a bunch of closing comments I'd like to talk to you about for a few minutes. If you've got a couple minutes, I would appreciate it. And I had a lot of closing remarks I was going to say, but one was Sheriff Mack was absolutely great. I've heard Sheriff Mack speak many times, and the first time I heard him speak was like he said down in Caritas in Alabama. But just think of one thing. If Sheriff Mack hadn't gone home that day and filed suit, none of you would be sitting in this room tonight. None of you would have heard the inspiration and what one man can do. And he implored you tonight to take action and do something. And each one of you in this room can do something. Each one of you can do something. If you think you're old, at least you can pray. And you heard from Sheriff Mack tonight how important prayer was. And that's just one aspect of it. But one of the things you need to absolutely do is to contact your county sheriff and tell them that you want to support them any way you can, however you can. Maybe it's on a posse. Maybe it's doing some volunteer work for the sheriff to help him out somehow. These people are overworked, and they're underthanked. And you've seen what police have been treated on TV. They need to know that we're behind them, and we need them. And they are our last hope here in our state. I mean, they can kick out, like he said, anybody they want to kick out. So go home, write your sheriff. If you don't know how to write where your sheriff's address is, I have 10 sheets over there. And I know it's not very many, but if you can't go online and find it or whatever, write them a letter, handwrite them a letter, type a letter, call them, just let them know that you stand behind them and we need them. And the other thing is we all need to get involved. And I told you earlier on, I was guilty of this early in my career. I was too busy. I didn't have the time. I couldn't go to this, couldn't go to that. Well, now this is where we're at. I would encourage you to go to school board meetings. There was a school board meeting someplace here recently. I can't remember where it was at. It doesn't make any difference. The parents went in and they were irate because of the mask mandate was still on the kids. That is cruel to put masks on kids. Anyway, the whole school board resigned and they got a new school board. And so you can make a difference, but you have to get in and you have to be involved. Go to your county board of supervisors meetings. Find out what's going on there. I'm the same way. I haven't done that. We need to start getting involved, because if we don't, all we're going to do tonight is go home and say, boy, Sheriff Mack was great. Wasn't that great? Wonder when we're going to have the next speaker. You guys are going to be the next people to do something, and you need to do it, and you need to start doing it. So I implore you, don't go home tonight and just say, boy, was that great. Go home and figure out what you're going to do, and everybody can do something. The one last thing I want to make a comment on here is that Sheriff Mack, I didn't know our wives were twins. She told you that, your wife told you that, yeah, your wife said that you were that's maybe the reason that you were the county sheriff. And so basically you married Mrs. Wright, and so did I. And I didn't know we both had the same first wife's name, as always. And usually she is always right. So with that, again, I want to thank you for coming. We got lots of goodies here. Get in line over here and get some goodies. Buy a Sheriff Mack book, have him sign it, talk with him. We've got a lot of tables over there that you can sit. The only thing is we had to scavenge some chairs, so if you could take the chairs over and just sit and have some coffee, have some cookies, that would be great. So again, thank you all for coming.